That was a story that was probably the hardest one I've ever had to shoot.
Hello and welcome to Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to gather TV news. I'm Stuart Pittman, Chief Photojournalist for QCN News, and I'm glad you're here. This week, we're talking about something no one's ever going to forget, September 11th. We've all seen the horrifying images of September 11th. But what was it like to be there? Journalists from around the world rushed to New York City to find the Big Apple broken and bruised.
Every time someone is found, we just say thank the Lord.
For those who were there, it's an assignment they will never forget, which is just the way those of us behind the lens would have it. And one person who knows all too well what the coming days after 9/11 were like is former photojournalist and a good friend of mine, Brad Ingram. Brad, hello.
Hey, how's it going, Stuart? Been a long time, but finally great to catch up with you and see you're doing well up north of us.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying life outside of local television. How many years has it been since you worked in local TV? I'm trying to remember.
It's been over 16 years. 16 years here in August it has been. So 16 plus 1 month, if you want to call it.
Well, that seems impossible. And I know that during your news career, you, like me, shot about everything there is to shoot. Mm-hmm. But I've got to think one of the things you remember more than anyone else is when WGHP, Fox 8 in Greensboro, North Carolina, sent you and reporter Nancy Lee to New York City in the hours after 9/11. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah. So when you reached out last week and asked me to participate, of course, I struggled with it because I've never really ever talked about it since then. I've done a few interspectral type of stories written about that time at the 5-year mark, 10-year mark. Never really published anything just because it wasn't. First off, it's not about that day is a very important day in America and America's history, and many, many lives have been affected because of it. So I've never been wanting to share that one little bit of piece that I had to play in that time. So today is kind of a twofold for me to talk about it from a journalist standpoint and what I saw and the days that we were up there, and then coming back out of it, how it changed me as a journalist and then as a person, inevitably to fast forward me into where I'm at today, kind of thing. So,
well, let's start from the beginning. Let me interrupt.
Sure.
Explain to us, the audience, how you came to be where you were, when you got there, how long you were there, what you did. Just a little bit of that.
Well, 9/11, of course, we were both in Greensboro that day, and between the onslaught of coverage that the Fox News had, it was nonstop all day. And they carried coverage from the time it started to the probably on into the morning hours of Wednesday. And we were cutting in and out as, we weren't like stepping on network coverage because that's where all the news was at. But we came in and we broke in a few times throughout the day. And I think we ended up cutting in at 6 to just kind of give an update of where we were at from that time of Greensboro and what was going on at the time, because there was, everybody was reeling and trying to make it localize that story to say, hey, what are we worried about here at home? And at home, we, up in Greensboro, they have the Colonial Pipeline. That was one of the first things that was a huge target. So that was Tuesday for us. Wednesday ended up, got up, was hoping, knowing that the days were going to be just like everybody trying to localize the event. And there was plenty of stories to do on a local level. So the 10-hour ride, it was quiet between me and Nancy. Me and Nancy usually got along very well. We were kind of the yin and yang. And we just kept it light. And then as the closer we got up on 95 to New York City and got into New Jersey, it got kind of, like, all right, getting our game faces on, because I mean, of course, we saw what happened, we saw what transpired, but for Nancy, she was a resident of Fort Lee, New Jersey. That's where she was born and raised at. So it was like going back home for her, just across the river. And next thing I know, we're in New York City. So we ended up there, and got about 5 hours of sleep. Crew calls at 7, and then here we are, Thursday morning. We're out the door.
Well, that Thursday morning,
Yeah.
a day and a half after 9/11, what is it you were told to do? I mean, you get there, you've got a camera, a reporter.
Sure. Oh yeah.
But you
We
need some
just had,
marching orders.
basic E&G gear, what you would normally have on a day. And, of course we took a little extra just in case. I was told to pack for 2 weeks. Didn't know how long we were going to be there for. Next thing I know, we get in the door, met the news director, met the EP that was still there.
Wow.
They were just coming out and they're like, you're going to go ahead and go in. We've already got you something. So just head on into the city. Everybody's alongside the West Side Highway, which pretty much everybody was staged at, from the locals to the national crews, or how that's where the staging point was at. That's also the main thoroughfare that most of the first responders and firefighters and police were going as they were starting that recovery effort that we learned about. And some of this video you're seeing here is from actually Friday, 9/14. That day was a tough day as well, but Thursday was probably the toughest. The closest that me and Nancy got down to was down to about Park Place. This is where you're actually seeing World Trade Center 7 there. That's as far as we could go because it was blocked.
Sure.
We couldn't get around it without going around. And I don't know if you know this, Stuart, but first off, to be in New York City, you need to be credentialed.
Sure.
Media to be able to go and not be hassled. We didn't have those credentials, and a lot of us that were coming in to help didn't have those credentials. So we had to basically sneak down, and it was just pouring rain. So that day we were able to get into where we got with a high. They had to, because I couldn't take in big old my old boat anchors, I used to call it, to get in there. So they gave us a mini DV camera, and so everything I shot that morning, as far as we could get down to, was shot on mini DV.
Wow.
But yeah, this is all World Trade Center 7. That was like the last one that fell that unfortunate day.
What was the response of people on the street? You were one of many, many, many media crews there. How do they take your presence?
It depends. It depends on where you were going. First off, when I say that, me and Nancy, we did several different stories from, a Thursday. The first thing we went and shot is they reopened the schools in all of Lower Manhattan. So these kids had to go back to school. They didn't want to be out of school. They wanted to started the process of getting back to normal. So they had kids going back to school. So we went to School 104 first thing and did a story there real quick. Came back to the West Side. I mean, it was literally go shoot a story, hustle back, and then go live, then go back out again. That's what it was for 17, 18-hour days for 4 days.
And you weren't there shooting an anthill. It had to be emotional. If we can cue up some video, there's some video that someone there with you got of a lady realizing she knew someone that was missing. If we could just play that, and maybe you tell us what this is all about.
We had search parties all day, going up and down to all the hospitals, and did you just see Lindsay hurt us? Yes, Lindsay. Lindsay's missing, yeah. Lindsay hurt us, yes. Lindsay Hotness, yes.
Yeah, that's still tough to watch.
It's a strong moment because she's absorbing the news that someone she knows and loves is in dire peril, and that's a hard thing to point a camera at. I don't care who you are.
Right. Yeah, that was a moment that I don't think has been seen before by too many people. it was a tough moment. I know that the folks that were there had a tough go, but there was
We had
lot of emotions, a lot of emotions. The biggest thing, Stuart, I can, I mean, I didn't see nothing graphic while I was there.
Right.
In my trek down to as close as we could get, I saw nothing graphic, no, something that would linger with you for all of your life. But the grief, the sorrow, the worry, everything that you could possibly imagine, I saw, and that left a thumbprint in my life for the rest of my life, and it has to this, and still does to this day.
Well, Brad, I can kind of tell that listening to you talk about it. I know you well enough to know you're like a hardened news guy like the rest of us.
Well, I was. Here's
Yeah.
the thing: 9/11 changed the way I became, way I looked at people. First off, I
Yeah.
became more empathetic. That ended up making me do the job differently, and that, I think, kind of skewed me to where I'm at today. And as far as getting out of the business, it's just because it got to the point where I was wanting to be a features guy. I like doing the fun, the light stuff, but as you know, everybody's got to do a little bit of everything these days. You don't get to pick and choose what you get to do.
Yeah.
And so that was a tough go. And but out of that, like I said, the empathy for people really, I mean, it started that day and that weeks following, and the months and years since. But there's just, whereas before 9/11, I would shoot the heck out of that and exploit it, and just, hey, I got the golden nugget, and that's what we pride ourselves off, was getting the golden nugget every night to
Sure.
to be the first video that gets run in the show and the hot open. Just, I mean, I'd rather had a personal moment than a golden nugget that we could exploit. That, hey, the Steve Hartman type stories that just,
Yeah.
they're the good feeling stories type of thing. But we're seeing this, and I know that you're running this, the video that I sent of some of the raw that we shot.
Yeah.
The probably the hardest story that I've ever had to shoot was this very one of all the missing posters and missing people flyers that were all littered all through Lower Manhattan. I mean, everywhere we went, we were literally shooting. We'd shoot one story, and then you're like, you turn around, and that's another thing. It didn't matter what block you were on in Lower Manhattan, New York City, everybody had a story.
Yeah.
So you could literally go to a corner in 10 minutes, have two different stories, no problem. That was the other. There was no ends to getting a story or talking to people. People felt compelled or was wanting to get their information out about their loved ones. Hey, I'm looking for my brother. I'm looking for my sister, my mother-in-law, my father.
Yeah.
And that was a story that was probably the hardest one I've ever had to shoot, but just because of all the people that were either grieving,
Right.
because in the back of my mind, as we're going through all that, I know what's down there. I know what's not down there, and I know that there was still some hope in the air. There were still, reports coming out of people coming out and being able to survive, but there was not many. So they elevated that as much as they could, but I think a majority of the people that did know, that were looking for someone, knew what was going on, especially once they said, bring, if you're someone that's missing, come down to the armory, bring a toothbrush, bring a hairbrush, so they could, have some kind of DNA of that individual.
Well, Brad, you touched on something that we talk about a lot on this show, and that is empathy.
Yeah.
And I've stated before that if you make a habit of taking a news camera into the worst moment of someone's life or the best moment of someone's life or somewhere in between, it inevitably makes you feel for that person. It creates empathy. And I don't think that's something that people who don't do what we do realize. I know that it's made me a better person.
Yeah, it has me too. And it's made me a lot more patient as a human being, to go through all that. It's made me a better journalist, a better employee. It's made me a better husband. It's made me a better friend, and a better colleague too. I've done a lot of growing up since then, since getting out of the business. But at the same time, I don't think without 9/11 happening and experiencing that I would have gotten there. I would have been that, hey, let's go and yeehaw, let's go and get some more bad news for the day. I don't envy what you guys do every day, whether it's even if it's covering the city council, everything that you guys do, the good, bad, and the ugly, is very important these days. And
Well,
to
Brad,
take it, just to take it from one step to the other, without you guys, how would you get the information? I mean, I know that since I've left the business, Facebook and social media, that's been a game changer in that sense. And I guess I'm sorry to get off on that tirade. And then, of course, we could talk biscuits about everything else in between that, whether it's the political side of it, where we're at today because of 9/11.
Sure.
There's so many places that, again, that moment in time, our generation's Pearl Harbor, that's always been that. I talked to my father, my grandfather. They had Pearl Harbor. They had Vietnam as their quote unquote moment in time. I think we had 9/11.
Well,
I know that this younger generation probably had the pandemic as a part of that.
Right.
So.
Bad news will do that. Brad, you've answered the questions that I had hoped you would. And
sure.
September 11th wasn't good for anybody, but I think the experience you had there helped you, made you, more empathetic, a better person, much like all of us. Every one of us can be a better person than we are right now. And I really had no idea that covering 9/11 had affected you like that. But I do thank you for telling us.
So just to finish up on how the rest of that week did, so that I know our news director then, Karen Gowsey, she was like, look, you guys are done after Sunday. And everybody at WDOR was appreciative of us coming up and spending time with them. Some of them had to sleep in hotels that didn't have any hot water. So the little bit of sleep that they did do or have and comfort that they had to get away from the situation, they had their own struggles, but they got up the next day and did it all over again. I know that once we came back and started heading back Monday, they had pretty much told us, hey, we're going to go ahead and do the last 15 minutes of the 10 o'clock news is going to be you guys and your experience.
Right.
We put together a little show for the last quarter hour of recutting some stuff that we shot here and cleaned it up instead of it just being slammed together, and put a little bit more effort into that storytelling. And I remember, I sent you that clip.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see me because they had me on set. Of course, I'm terrible in front of the camera. Always have been, especially when it's live.
Right.
But that's gotten a little bit better as I've aged, and especially when I'm comfortable with whatever it is we're talking
about. Yeah.
And but I'm sitting over there, and Neil McNeil's asking a couple of questions, and if you look at me, I'm a wreck. I'm trying to play the TV guy and give him a great answer and, wrap it up as best I can. But I was done emotionally. I was done that day, and I did the best I could to hide it.
Sure.
From everybody. But I think that management there, especially our former chief photographer, Keith Hell, he said, you need to take probably a couple of days off. You earned it. I was like, yeah, and I have. So I did that, and that started that process of unraveling some of the things that was in the back of the head, what you saw, what you endured, what you had to hide behind the lens from to get the story, but yet be sympathetic and empathetic without it being you're glorifying it any more than you already have, because it's that sad. But the one thing that I will say, so we're done Thursday. A week later, Nancy calls me and says, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just chilling. I'm, enjoying some R&R finally from the event. It's like, well, let's go see a movie. She just wanted to be around people.
Mm-hmm.
And I can understand that. And it made sense that she called me because we were in the same car together and experienced the same thing together. And I was like, yeah, where do you want to get? She's like, I just want to watch something light. I'm like, okay, great. I'm fine with that. I do not want to go see something very heavy. So at the time, Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back had just come out. And, from the Clerks days, I like to watch that. So I was like, I was going to go see it no matter what. So we ended up going to see a matinee. Like first thing, there was still at that time there was still no one out, no one really doing anything because people were still kind of winding back up in life. And we enjoyed a movie, and then halfway through the movie, Nancy looks over to me and says, "Which one's Silent Bob?" And I looked over to her and I was like, "Are you serious? You don't know who Silent Bob is? It's the dude that hasn't said a word the whole entire movie." And then at that point, the light switch off went for both of us. We had the biggest belly laugh in our lifetime. And then that's the part of time where me personally was able to start moving forward again.
Sure.
And that movie wasn't the greatest, but that movie will always have a place in my heart in that moment because we shared it together and it started where we're at today.
Well, I thank you for sharing it with us because there's few people who can explain what it was like being up there and what it did to your emotions than someone who was there like yourself. And I don't know what you might say to people whenever they mention 9/11 to you, but my God, you've got some stories.
I've always reflected in pen and paper, and I've always never that's something that's a personal thing for me. Not wanting to be like, hey, look at me. I've never been that kind of person when it comes to what I've experienced. And you know well too, because it wasn't too long later that we both ended up in Blacksburg covering Virginia Tech.
Yep.
So, I mean, and you were there for that. We were all there for that one.
Yeah.
At some point. So, I mean, and that was just a sliver of what it was. And I want to mention this is I only lived it for 4 days. Okay. So I wasn't a staff photographer. I wasn't anybody there that actually had to live there, work there. I can only imagine being a New Yorker in the New York press at that time, having to deal with that every day for months, years, decade later.
Yeah.
And to have that remembrance every year. I've had opportunities to go to New York City since for the job I do, but I've never been back to New York City since 9/11 simply because it's not like I know that things have moved on. I know that there's a memorial there. They've done everything right. They put up another tower. That's a sliver of my timeline that I just haven't scratched an itch to get to go there yet. One day, maybe, but here almost 25 years later, just haven't done it. Haven't done it.
Well, you've helped us understand it, and I hope that we can help others understand it as well because, TV photojournalists have an amazing view on just about everything, and that includes a global apocalypse. So hate to see that kind of thing happen, but those of us in our business want to see it if it does. Brad Ingram, thank you so much for helping us understand what it was like to cover September 11th in New York City hours after it happened. That's a hard thing to understand if you weren't there. But I do thank you, and we will talk again soon. And thank you for watching Behind the Lens, an inside look at what it's like to cover TV news. We'll see you next time.
Queen City News Plus. Just search Queen City News on your smart TV's app store.